Hi, I'm Sarah Jackson, the Director of Nutrition at the Optimum Health Clinic. And today I'm talking with Kiran about his journey with CFS. I'm really looking forward to finding out how your nutrition work has played a part in your health journey so far. We'll also look at what didn't work particularly as expected as well. So just for some context, Kiran, you've been working with one of our nutritional therapists, Yana, for around 6 months now. And prior to your onset in March, you were in full-time employment as a vet. We've spoken about that you needed to take some time off around the illness. And now coming through the other side, it's such a success story because we're so happy to say that not only are you back to work, but you're running a training program that is something you've been hoping to get going for years. So we're so happy to have you today, Kiran. Thank you so much for sharing your health journey with us.
Not at all. Thank you for having me. I'm looking forward to talking more about what's been happening.
Yeah, so maybe we should start off with the fact that you have had CFS for around 10 years now, haven't you?
Yeah, that's right. It started with I overtrained for a 10-mile run, and I'm quite competitive, and I went for quite a fast time, and then I got really sick a few days later. Just ended up with a kind of innocuous viral infection. I then kind of broke out in spots on my hands and my arms and my legs, which is all a bit worrying. So a good friend of my wife's is a dermatologist, and I ended up with a referral to her because my GP was a bit stumped. And actually, Guy said at the time that whatever the long, complicated name of the skin condition was, in the back of her mind, she seemed to think that linked in with chronic fatigue. So it actually put that thought in my head kind of 10 years ago. When I look back at my GP notes, the chronic fatigue kind of started a few weeks, as I say, after that illness. And then it really just persisted for the next 10 years. But I was fortunate, I was never bedbound with the chronic fatigue like so many people can be. I had about 6 to 8 days a month of fatigue, where I was busy. I had a young family. The family were younger. The boys were younger at that stage. So that would have been in my early 40s, late 30s. So it was still, we were a busy family, and I was running a big business, quite a big business. I had in total probably 5 vet practices across Surrey and Dorset. So I was a classic kind of you're going to burn out kind of person, but it wasn't burnout. It was kind of chronic fatigue from that illness, I believe. And I just I didn't really have much choice. I was running a business, everything was on the line, like the house and a lot of collateral. So I just had to kind of plod on, and it was really hard kind of running. It was really hard being a dad and a husband and a business owner and responsible for lots of people. I mean, actually well over 50 people. But that my kind of way is just to kind of muddle through and try and make the best of things, which is kind of what I did then for the next 10 years, I guess. Yeah.
So you feel it was more of a gradual onset, it didn't happen suddenly?
Yeah, yes, exactly. Well, I mean, it came on suddenly in terms of after the illness, but then it stayed with me on a kind of chronic level where it was just a few days a month. I was quite up and down, but I could just about, I could get through the day, but I'd get through the week, but come the weekend, I was absolutely exhausted, and I wasn't really able to do, it had an effect on relationships because it was always a struggle. I mean, of course I carry on seeing friends and family, but I just struggled to have the energy to kind of interact with people. I mean, also vetting is a very sociable job where you're just talking and communicating constantly with people, which is great, and I love that. But come the weekend, you just want a bit of time to yourself. So yeah, it had a massive impact on friends and family. I mean, they've all stood by me and they've all been really supportive, but many people, end up understandably getting quite frustrated and quite, as time went on, I was much better at being able to say to people, look, I may or may not be able to make that meeting or, that social occasion. And I kind of always preempted it and gave people the heads up and just, and explain that, I might have to make a call on the day kind of thing. And it was like that for a long time. So yeah, I guess that's the biggest impact it has is on relationships at the end of the day, and then your ability to work and function. And it's just miserable. It's just a miserable existence. But you can't see it at the time. In a way, it's easier to look back and see how bad you were when you look back. And it's only when you're better that you realise, how awful it actually was. And it is just a hugely chronically debilitating, chronic, horrible disease. I mean, I think all of the, many chronic diseases are just awful. And and of course it's so stigmatized as well. That makes it even more difficult. Yeah.
I'm sure so many of our audience, from our fatigue-related community can really relate to that onset and to what life is looking like for you then. So when did it come to a head? What brought you to the Optimum Health Clinic earlier on this year?
Yeah, so, I mean, a couple of things, a couple of observations. So I ended up selling my business about 5 years ago, and counterintuitively, I actually ended up getting worse after I sold the business. And one of the reasons for selling the business was the chronic fatigue. And I mean, actually, the main reason was wanting to be around more as the boys grow up. I just didn't want to be that kind of workaholic business owner. I didn't want to miss out on their development. And I knew that they'd be gone in a few years' time. So that was one of the reasons. But the chronic fatigue definitely had a big part in selling the business. But it was very strange because for the last 4 or 5 years, the chronic fatigue has actually got worse. And I was having more, but I think that was because the adrenaline had left my system because I wasn't working in a really stressful environment anymore. And actually, as I relaxed, it got worse. So now looking back, that makes sense. But what actually happened to make me get help was back in the spring of this year, back in February, I had my first coronavirus vaccine, and I was very reluctant. I was quite nervous about having it because actually often whenever I have a vaccine, whether it's typhoid, I'm thinking back when I've had influenza vaccines or typhoid vaccines for travel, I quite often am a bit poorly afterwards. So it wasn't so much that I was worried about COVID. It was more just whenever I know that when I get vaccinated, it can make me poorly. But I had no idea I was going to be so poorly. And literally within a few days, it was more than just the side effects that everyone was talking about. I had very severe fatigue, and I ended up collapsing in work. I had very severe neck pain, and I do a lot of surgery. And often when you're operating, your neck is bent, obviously. And I do quite complex surgery as well. So they're quite often 2, 3, 4 hour operations. And I collapsed after doing a basic 2-hour operation, a very straightforward procedure. And that's when I thought, this isn't right. This is not good. So that was after I soldiered on for about 5 weeks after the vaccine, and I shouldn't have been in work, but that's just my work ethic. So I cracked on and got to the point where I collapsed, and then thought, okay, that's it. I'm going to need to take some time off. And it was around that time that my wife was saying to me, look, you really need to get some help because you can't do this on your own. And of course, I've done lots of reading around the subject, and I thought I knew best, as you do. Pride gets in the way. I'm a vet, so I've got some clinical knowledge. As everyone says, a little bit of knowledge is a really dangerous thing. I'm that classic person. I always think I know best. And of course, it was thanks to my wife who reminded me that I need to get some help. And then I reached out to you guys, and wow, I've never really looked back. It's been amazing.
Yeah, it's so lucky and fortuitous that you found us.
Yeah.
Given that you were below par for so many years, I'd love to know, had you tried any other interventions, both psychological or nutrition-wise?
I have tried a number of different diets. I tried plant-based diets a couple of times, although I'm not a vegetarian, and I was still, although it was plant-based, I think you call it a flexitarian diet, where it was predominantly plant-based with a bit of meat and fish. And that was about 2 years ago, and that did have a big impact on me. I did feel significantly better. I did a ketogenic diet. Oh, when I say I did the plant-based diet, I mean, it would have been for a minimum of 6 months. When I did a ketogenic diet, I did that for about 3 months. I, again, felt better, but I found it really difficult to stick to. I did it for about 3 months. That was a real struggle. I've tried a low-carb, high-fat type diet. I used to be super active, so I play a lot of sports, or have done over the years. So kind of you name it, I play it. So and I guess the things I really loved was squash. That was the thing that I was, I played squash since my 20s. I had to give that up 4 years ago, 4 or 5 years ago. In the end, I was still trying to play even with the chronic fatigue. But what would happen is that I'd play for a few weeks and then get unwell. And then I'd give up for a few weeks and I'd go back and I just persevere. But eventually I started to realize that the exercise was definitely a complete no-no. And every time I over-exercised, and I say over-exercise, I was just having a game of squash, but doing that consistently twice a week for 3 or 4 weeks, and then I'd just get really unwell. So eventually I realized that I had to just give it up. So I actually very sadly had to give up all exercise pretty much. I used to run a lot and, do weights. And anyway, that actually was the hardest thing. The depression that I got with the chronic fatigue and having to give up the exercise were the two hardest things. But yeah, you said what other things have I tried? So I kept trying with exercise. That didn't really help. The diets, I found it difficult to stick to them long term. As I say, 6 months on the plant-based diet and 3 months on the ketogenic diet. Vitamin D did have a massive impact on me a year ago. I did get my vitamin D levels checked and they were a bit low, and I did supplement, and that made a massive difference. But it wasn't the whole answer, because obviously after the vaccine, my levels were really good coming up to the vaccination. So the fact that I deteriorated so much after the vaccine, clearly vitamin D was only a small part of the solution. Yeah, so they're the kind of things that I've tried.
Brilliant. Are you comfortable telling us a little bit more about the lowest points for you with your history of the illness?
Yeah, so I think the depression that I've suffered with the chronic fatigue has been that's been the most debilitating thing. So what I've always found really difficult is I never know how much I can, on a day-to-day basis, I never knew how much I could do. So you've got this constant mental battle of, am I overdoing it? Oh, I feel good. I'm going to do something. I still feel good. I'm going to do a bit more. Actually, that wasn't really my approach. The minute I felt good, I would just overdo it, because I had all those things that I hadn't managed to do that I just wanted to crack on with. And I'm a pretty dynamic person. So I found it really, really frustrating not to be able to just get on and do things. I mean, at its worst, apart from the depression, which in itself is horrendous, and I was suicidal on a number of occasions. I mean, I don't think I would have ever followed through with it, but clearly as a vet, it's quite easy to follow through. We've got all the drugs, and it's very, we do it on a daily basis with our patients. So it would have been really easy, but thankfully I didn't do that, but I did definitely think about it a few times. So I guess that was the lowest point. But it's the debilitation from not being able to think clearly, the brain fog. I've got a really active mind, and I've got a really creative brain. So not being able to think about things and plan and create and come up with ideas. And then just practical day-to-day things like not being able to do the shopping, or not be able to put things in the dishwasher. Or it's not that I couldn't do it. and I did carry on doing the washing and the cleaning and well, I don't clean very much. I've never cleaned very much. So my wife would vouch for that. But in terms of things like, loading the dishwasher, unloading the dishwasher, I love cooking. So doing the cooking, putting clothes out, I could do it, but it was just like walking through treacle. I mean, it was just impossible. Trying to go to the supermarket and do a shop, it would take, I'd need an hour, 2 hours afterwards to recover. So yeah, I think it's twofold. There's the psychological side to it and the depression and the brain fog. And then there's a physical side, which is, just not being able to do really menial things. Yeah, because it just has such an overarching impact on your whole life, on every part of your life. So yeah, the lowest point was suicide, but actually that was only on a few occasions. On a day-to-day basis, it was just the frustration of not being able to do menial jobs and not knowing how much you can and can't do. Yeah.
Pacing is so difficult to get right. It's the pacing is really difficult, and managing with payback for overdoing or overexertion with your activities. I know that's such a difficult part of this illness to live with. As you just touched on then, CFS is such a multifactorial condition. It affects every facet of your life, and it also affects most facets within your systems and your symptoms physically. And our expertise across both departments is in guiding our clients through the process and unraveling some of the drivers behind those symptoms that you've spoken about. And I'd love to hear more about what you feel were those breakthrough moments in your nutrition work so far with us.
Actually, the comprehensive stool sample was a massive kind of paradigm shift for me, really, because there was a lot leading up to that. I'd already started taking supplements. I'd already was cleaning my diet up more and more, but it was the comprehensive stool sample that gave me real clarity. Well, it gave Jana real clarity, and then me real clarity on actually kind of what was going on. And I guess because I'm clinical, I need to know, I need something to hang my hat on. Whether it's a definitive diagnosis, whether it's a name. It's not that I'm a huge believer in, a name for the sake of a name, but just having some kind of signpost to go on. And I think when Jana discovered that it looked very likely that I had this thing called small intestinal bacterial overgrowth, or SIBO, that really, really massively helped me, because for the first time I was actually able to say, well, actually, this looks like I've got a gut problem, basically. And I could say to people, I've got a gut problem, that's what's causing my chronic fatigue. And so in a way, that was massive, because, as I say, I still feel the stigma, even though, I'm slightly different, perhaps, in the sense that, I've run a big business, a fairly big business, and I'm not someone that just sits on my backside, which I think a lot of the population look at people like us and just think we're lazy and can't bother to get off the sofa, when actually I wouldn't wish this on my worst enemy. And just having that explanation was massively helpful. I didn't understand the report, even though I'm a vet. I thought I'd understand it. I had no idea. It was like a 15-page report, and Jana went through it literally line by line and helped me understand it, brought it to life. And so for me, the name, the fact that it was a gut condition really helped. Definitely the diet, the change in diet. I was eating a lot more vegetables, reducing the sugar, reducing the flour. So undoubtedly that was helping. And the supplements probably were, but the problem was that after the side effects from the vaccination, I had no appetite. I was really nauseous, and the supplements actually made that worse to start with. But we were introducing them really, really slowly, and they're really quite powerful supplements. I thought I'd be fine with them, and I've always been fine with supplements, but actually it was different this time, and I did have to really stick with it for a good month or so, and gradually things started to fall into place. For me, psychologically, knowing that there was an underlying gut problem was really helpful. But in terms of practice, what was actually helping, well, it would have undoubtedly been the diet changes and the supplementation, and probably just feeling more positive and optimistic, because I felt quite hopeless and I didn't think I could ever get better. The minute I could see that there was something that tangible that you could hang your hat on, I think psychologically that gave me a huge boost. Diet was helping, supplements were helping. Then I got this kind of, oh, you've got a gut problem. Oh, what a relief. Now we can deal with that and add in some other kind of treatments specifically targeted towards that. So I think it's a combination of physically feeling better and psychologically feeling better. And the whole thing was just like a vicious upward spiral of it was all just very, very positive. And I was just day by day, I was tracking my mood and my energy levels on a scale of like 0 to 10. And I could just, looking back over it, starting at, like a 3 out of 10, a 2 out of 10 energy levels, you could just see it ticking up like week by week. It's the whole combination. It's not one thing. It's the diet and the supplements and the psychological support, and actually the very fact that Jana just took it seriously and you felt listened to. I mean, that's massive as well, that someone actually takes you seriously, because everyone else that I'd spoken to was just like, you're a phony, kind of, they didn't say that, but you kind of know, you feel that when you talk to people, or maybe it's a cognitive bias and you think that that's what people are thinking, but either way you feel it. And so it was very it's massive to have someone on your side. It felt like she was really, apart from my wife, it felt like really she was the only person that was actually on my side, actually. Well, no, my mum, that's a bit harsh, but it was just nice to have someone on your side, really, and helping you and taking it seriously.
Yeah, I think so many people will relate to that. Their experience with such a chronic illness as ME, CFS, and other fatigue-related conditions can leave you very isolated. There's not a lot of help out there. And that's why we really do try to offer this integrative approach, where we're looking at everything from a really holistic perspective to address all those drivers. Because as you said, it's never just one thing. It wasn't just the gut issues, but it's looking at all of those drivers that could be behind the fatigue and trying to lessen that burden and, knock them off one by one. But it's so brilliant that really that turning point was in resolving those gut issues that I think had been there since your 20s, hadn't they?
Yeah, looking back, I think that although there was the overtraining virus thing, that was 2009, it was only really after Jana was, I knew the gut thing. I knew the gut thing was a problem, because when I started looking at my history and thinking about my history, or going through my history with Jana, I kept kind of thinking, oh, my guts have not been right for a long time. Yes, probably back into my 20s. And I was often getting unwell in my 20s. And I just put it down to, being a vet student and working ridiculous hours. But there was more to it than that. So yes, now that I look back, I think that the gut thing goes back a long way, actually. Yeah.
And digestive issues and symptoms can play a really big part in fatigue for lots of different reasons that you've discovered. Apart from the gut improvements and the fatigue, which I should say, you're very fortunate in that your fatigue improved very quickly. Not all of our clients experience it in the same way, but it's amazing that when Jana had been able to hone in on the right supplements and the right eating plan for you, that your fatigue really did lift within a matter of a couple of months, didn't it?
I was literally just getting better by the week. I know I wasn't expecting this level of improvement. I thought that I would improve gradually and it would take me a year. I think we're all different, and I think it probably depends on what the underlying cause is. And it may be that my underlying cause was relatively straightforward to deal with. It may be that my diet was already reasonably good. May help that I'm reasonably fit, and so she just needed to make a few little tweaks. And I don't want to underplay it, because they're massive tweaks, but she's made a few not small, highly significant changes, and those have all added up into like a fairly massive effect. You know, I don't know where I'm going to end up. So yes, the improvement's has been amazing and relatively quick, but I may dip again, and I probably won't dip as low. And this is early days, and I'm really realistic about that. But I think we're all on our own journeys, and I think what I've learned through this is just to really listen to my body and try and, you know, if I think I'm getting a bit tired, just to really take note of that and do something about it, and just try and be as proactive as possible. But while I've got good energy, I am just cracking on. So I know I may end up going backwards at some point, but the difference this time is that I know that Jana will dig me out of a hole if I get stuck. I mean, I'm going to carry on talking to Jana, and we'll carry on having meetings less frequently now than to start with. But I know that I've got a kind of get out of jail free card, if you like, if I get stuck, which is massive in itself.
Exactly. And it's an ongoing journey, as you say, with this illness. It can be fluctuating, and you know, it can be unpredictable, which is one of the frustrations with it. But you've made such an enormous amount of progress, as we say, in this comparatively short space of time, which is testament to the work that you've put in, as well as the brilliant support that Jana has offered, and you know, the way that we approach things at the OHC. I was keen to know, how did you find the OHC approach initially?
I think the thing that made the biggest difference were the kind of interviews and the video interviews and the testimonials on the website. I realised that there was some hope for the first time. Having spoken to quite a few doctors, I hadn't really made any progress over the years. I genuinely didn't believe that I could get better. But when I looked at the website for the first time, I actually thought, wow, there is some hope here. People were actually getting better. And I just thought people didn't get better from chronic fatigue. So that just gave me a massive amount of hope. And it probably just gave me the impetus and the energy to kind of get on and crack on and fill in the paperwork. The paperwork, Jana was really helpful, and your admin team, because they said, look, you know, you're going to have loads of paperwork to fill in. And normally with paperwork, I'd just like to get on and do it. But you guys were saying to me, you know, just take it, you just do it over 2 weeks, take your time, just little by little, just fill it in. Try and think about your previous history, because it won't all be there with the doctors. You'll need to probably add to it. And actually, for me, the hardest thing in the whole process, which was the paperwork. And actually, if that was the hardest thing, it's not that bad, really. And you guys just held my hand every step of the way. So yeah, literally day by day, over about 2 weeks, I filled it in. I think I got it done in a week in the end. And then Jana was amazing at kind of collating all of that information, all your admin team were, and she clearly had gone through it meticulously, because I remember the first meeting, she literally knew every little bit of it, and then I had to add a little bit of detail here and there, but clearly she had gone through it in a huge, which I knew she'd have gone through it in a lot of detail, but that was very reassuring and refreshing, actually, because again, and no disrespect to my doctor or doctors, but you don't always feel that they know your history. I'm a vet, and I like to make sure that I do know as much of the historical information about my patients when I talk to owners. So that I love that was massive. And that supportive approach every step of the way, really, really thorough communication, but manageable communication. So I wasn't inundated with unnecessary information. It was relevant and in enough depth. It was just like the perfect amount of information and the perfect amount of support when I was feeling really quite low and lacking in energy at that early stage. Implementable solutions, I would say. It was just a very gentle approach, and and that just really resonated with me. I felt just so supported. And every stage with either Jana or with the organisation, I just felt really well communicated to. Just the right amount of communication, not too many emails, not too few. She always answered my questions. I didn't have big gaps of information month to month between meetings. Yeah, just really incredibly effective. What I would call a kind of high performing environment. I've worked in a few. I've worked with the guide dogs. I've worked with the police dogs. I've worked with an organisation called Hope in our local community, and I would say in Surrey, these are all really high performing environments, and so I know what those environments look like. I've worked in them or worked with them. So I guess what I was really excited about with the OHC was that I just felt that that's what you guys are, and that's hugely encouraging when you find an organisation like that.
Thank you so much for those kind words, because we strive really hard to achieve that. So it's really amazing to know that you found that to be your experience, and thank you. Can I ask, what would you say to yourself at the beginning of this journey? And what advice would you have for someone else who was in your position?
So what I would say, so if I could turn back the clock and talk to myself, I would say, stop thinking like a vet, meaning stop thinking that you can sort your own problems out just because you're a vet and you've got some, it's that I've got a little bit of knowledge is a really dangerous thing. Well, yeah, it so is. It's even worse if you're medical. So stop being a vet. Also, try and get rid of your pride, meaning reach out for help. Reach out for help and actually get some help, because you can't do it all yourself. And yes, I love researching things, and that's part of my cognitive bias, I think, is that I just like researching and finding out answers. But when it's your own health, you need to actually get proper professional support, and trust that those people will be able to do a far better job than you'll ever be able to do on your own. So if I'm saying that as a vet with medical knowledge, then the average person with no medical knowledge have got no chance at all in getting themselves better. So just go and get help. And I think looking back, we were talking earlier about I've had some coaching in some different areas of my life, and whenever I've had recently when I've been coached, I've always ended up with kind of transformational results. So finally, I'm at that stage very late in life where I've actually realised that I just need to get coaches for different areas of my life to help me get better results or amazing results, which I'll never get on my own. So yes, talking to my younger self, I would just say simply swallow your pride and get some help, basically.
Thank you so much. They're really inspirational words for so many people that I'm sure will really resonate. We know that your health journey is ongoing, but we'd love to know a little bit more about what your life is looking like now compared to what it was like when you first started working with the clinic.
Yeah, I mean, my life, I keep saying transformational because I do feel that. I love coaching. I've coached loads of vets over the years, over like 20 years, mainly surgery coaching, but I've also done all kind of coaching within the veterinary environment. And I just love it. I mean, I love being a vet, and I love coaching, but I started to hate it the last 10 years. And I think now that I've got my health back, I've kind of fallen back in love with that profession. So that's massive to, I guess, give me back some purpose in my life. I mean, I've got a lot of purpose in my life. I've got an amazing family. It's improved I believe I don't know if my wife would agree, but I do believe my relationships with my family have improved and will continue to improve. I guess that's probably the most significant one, but in a way, the most tangible one is the vet coaching, because it's harder to see those improvements within a family, because I think that just takes time, because those relationships, they're people that just have known you for a long time. So it takes time for them to truly believe that you are getting better. Whereas when it's something more tangible, like what you do, it's a bit simpler. The very fact that I'm really loving vetting to the point where I've actually just taken on 2 new coaching jobs, part-time. John will be pleased that they're not full-time. But yeah, I've taken on a couple of part-time coaching jobs, doing what I love. I'm trying to set up an online coaching vet business because vets are having a really hard time at the moment and they just need help. So actually, it's kind of given me my purpose in life back again. So my family is a massive part of my life, but hopefully I've explained that well enough that, a big part of that is about how you can help the world and improve the world, how you can give back. And I guess I do that through my job. So yeah, it's made a massive difference. I feel like I've got my life back, actually. It's only really looking back that I realised that I was in a pretty bad place. And now I feel like I can actually just crack on with my life, and I've got another, hopefully, many years ahead to kind of do the things that I'm passionate about. Family, vetting and coaching, and I love paragliding. So being able to do all of that and traveling and doing all of those things, it's just like you've got your life back again. Nothing could be more powerful than that, really.
Just incredible. Thank you so much, Kiran, for giving us your time and for so generously sharing your story with us. It's really, it's been quite incredible to see your journey from, where you started 10 or so years ago to where you are now, back to paragliding, back to doing the job that you love and finding all your passions again. We're so glad to have played a part in that journey for you.
I just wish I'd found you guys like 10 years ago. I feel like I've wasted 10 years of my life. But anyway, I guess if this can help other people save some time, because looking back, actually what I say to my younger self is stop wasting time. You've just wasted 10 years. I haven't wasted 10 years, but I think I could have had 10 years of better quality life. And I'd say to anyone, nothing is worth, time is the most important commodity. And I think I'd say to anyone, don't waste that time, just reach out and get some help.
Thank you. I'm sure you've inspired so many people, and we're so grateful for your sharing your story today.
You're really welcome. And I would like to just say thanks very much to the Optimum Health Clinic, and in particular to Jana, because she's been unbelievable. And yeah, she's just been amazing. She's held my hand every step of the way. She's listened to me, kind of validated my thought processes. It's felt like a real kind of team effort. You guys have been brilliant, and I'd encourage anyone to be open-minded enough to approach you and talk to you and just reach out and get some help.
Really, we can't thank you enough for being so honest and candid in sharing your experience and your health history with us. It's, I'm sure, going to inspire so many people. Thank you so much for your time today, Kiran.
You're very welcome.
And if you'd like to talk to us further, then you can access all of our details via the website. And please feel free to leave a comment about your experience. And we really look forward to supporting your health journey too.